In this lesson, I'll show you how to start unpicking existing Excel designs. Whilst it's useful to know how to build an Excel workbook from scratch, in work environments we often need to understand and use workbooks built by other people. At first glance, these inherited files can seem daunting and massively complicated. As a beginner, you might assume that these tools were designed by a rocket scientist, yet 9 times out of 10, they're just over-engineered and riddled with poor design choices. I'm going to show you how to strip those back and simplify them using a proven best practice approach. The next thing to know about worksheets in Excel is that they can be hidden. Used correctly, this is extremely powerful as it allows you to hide complex calculations in the background whilst presenting a simple output in the form of a report or a dashboard or whatever is appropriate for the person using it. We're going to build a dashboard for our tool, so before I show you how to unhide sheets, let's rename our worksheet accordingly. So to do that, just right click on the worksheet, click rename, and then we're going to call it dashboard. For this course, I've looked through freely available datasets on the internet to use as case studies. And I felt that movies was something we probably all have experience of, particularly with the recent pandemic. So without further delay, let's have a look at some movie data. I've hidden a few sheets in this workbook to demonstrate how unhiding works. You can unhide any sheet by right-clicking on an existing worksheet, and we've only got one in this example, so let's right-click on it, click unhide, and then you'll see a list of the sheets that are hidden behind the scenes. In this case, we're going to unhide the one called 2016, so double-click on it, and that'll unhide it. I'm going to use this case study to show how a tool can evolve over years, from 2016, 2017, and then into 2018, and how a user's improvement in their Excel skills can influence how the file ends up turning out. We'll start with the 2016 worksheet, and sometimes worksheets are referred to as tabs, so you might hear me calling them that. Unfortunately, this is a very typical example of how data might be stored, and trust me, I've seen way worse, and in tools designed for very important business processes. I'm going to give an honest review of this and pretty much tear it apart. That will give you an insight into the approach I would take in analysing an existing workbook with a view to improving it. Finding some very small positives, it seems there has been some attempt at organisation. Each of the columns of data seems to contain things which make sense to be stored together, and in most columns there is a heading which aims to describe the data stored below it, and you can see that here in row 4. And now the bad stuff. So the columns are improperly sized, meaning there's way too much space in some and not enough in others. For example, some of the titles are overlapping other columns, so you can see it here in this worldwide gross one, and in Movie Studio you've got all this white space down the side of column C which just isn't needed. We can improve that immediately with the auto fit option that I showed you earlier. Earlier on we just did it on one column, but you can actually select multiple columns like this, so if we select B to E and then just double click to the right where you've got the double arrow on any of them, and it will auto fit all of the columns in your selection. What you can now see is that everything fits nicely within its column width with no overlaps and no unnecessary white space. Some headings start with capitals and others don't, and in some of them we've got an underscore to represent a space and some we've got a normal space. Let's get that sorted. Hope you'll agree that looks much better. So there's nothing wrong with using an underscore or a space or capitals or small letters, but what we're looking for here is structure and consistency. In the column Movie Studio, I can see 4 different formats for Walt Disney Pictures. You might think this is an extreme example, and I've overdone it a bit for effect. Honestly, it's quite the opposite. I once saw a column called Department with 17 different spellings of engineering in it. Worse still, whilst engineering was one of those, it wasn't the most common. When things like this start to become really important is when we start using formulas to manipulate the data, and that's really where Excel adds all of its value. In the next lesson, we'll move on to the 2017 tab and consider how it's improved from the 2016 one, but how it still leaves plenty of room for improvement.